Okay. Hello and welcome back to Dishin With Democracy. This is our 9th episode, and we are continuing on with our special series on talking about the topic of immigration. My name is Marya, and I am one of the hosts. I'm a senior psych major on the pre-law track, and I'm an undergraduate coordinator here at the Center for Civic Justice. My pronouns are she, her, hers.
Hi, beautiful people. My name is Chloe. I use she, hers pronouns. I'm a freshman majoring in marine biology, and I'm really excited to be here.
Hi, my name is Faaria. I'm a freshman studying political science on a pre-law track. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm glad to be part of this today.
Hi guys, my name is Leslie and I use she, her pronouns. I'm a third year double majoring in psych and sociology, also on the pre-law track, and I'm really excited to be part of this project.
Hi everyone, I'm Isabella. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm a junior here at Stony Brook, majoring in political science on a pre-law track, and I'm really excited to be here, and I can't wait to get this really important discussion started.
Well, thank you, ladies, for introducing yourself. On today's episode of Dishin With Democracy, we wanted to engage with members of our student staff and our student faculty here at Stony Brook, and we wanted to have a conversation with them about the importance about talking about immigration with students from a faculty perspective, because I think that that's important to include in our conversation. Our first guest today is Dr. Lori Flores. She's an associate professor of history at Stony Brook University. She teaches classes about U.S. Latinx, labor and immigration, about food history, and about the U.S. and Mexico and global borderlands history. If I missed anything, please feel free to add it, Dr. Flores. I will now add you onto the stream and allow you to introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. I think you did a fantastic job of introducing me. Really happy to be here with you all. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. We wanted this episode, like I said, to be special. Yeah, are we good? Sorry. We just wanted this episode to feature you because we have heard really great things from Chloe, who's taking your class right now. And we were just really interested about the topics that you talk about in class, and we wanted to see how we could apply that to just our conversations for today. And I'm just going to jump right into it. As a professor, I'm sure you have a wide array of students from different backgrounds and different cultures. Do you find yourself tailoring your lessons to be inclusive with current events? So right now we're talking about immigration. So do you find it to be inclusive of immigration going on, just to ensure that students that aren't necessarily from an immigrant background are aware of how those who may be from an how those who are from an immigrant background are affected by what's going on?
Absolutely. Yes, I think even though I'm a historian and people might assume that we just focus on the long past, I've always seen, and the reason I entered my field in the first place of Latinx history, labor, immigration, civil rights, is because not only have these things been long-standing struggles for centuries, but they continue on today. And in my opinion, there's no better thing to get students interested in history than to show them what's echoing in their current world, because it allows us to look at what's going on today and think about, how is this a repeat of what happened in a previous decade or century? How is what this group is experiencing and going through is a reverberation of what another group in the past in the US or somewhere else has gone through in regards to immigration? So I've always found that integrating current events whenever I can is not something I do lightly. It's something that I definitely think about before each lecture. But I do think that it has the potential to reach people of all stripes, even people with immigrant backgrounds, because of their families and how they might communicate, share their own histories. Some of them might not know a lot about the context in which their parents or grandparents grew up either. And it's only by taking classes like this that the light bulb goes off in a way. And then that opens up some new relationships and dynamics with their own loved ones. So I really love teaching what I do because it allows us to talk about what's long gone, but also what's still here.
Yeah, I'm so glad you feel that way. I definitely think that we do need to learn from the past. But as a follow-up, as a professor at Stony Brook, have you witnessed students being directly affected by their immigration status? And if so, how have you seen their immigration status affect their ability to complete their education or obtain their career goals?
Yeah, that's a great question. I've definitely seen it impact some students I've had over the years. I've been at Stony Brook for 10 years, and so I've been able to see students worry about immigration-related matters over the course of a couple of presidencies now, just here at Stony Brook alone. So I've had really talented, bright, incredibly promising students run into roadblocks because they are DACA recipients waiting on renewal, or because they are dreamers, or because somebody in their family has been waiting on a visa for 15, 20, 25 years. I've heard stories. And all of this can keep them from achieving things such as even getting a summer internship if they need citizenship status, or getting a scholarship after they leave Stony Brook to pursue graduate school or a fellowship of some kind. If they're encountering issues with a loved one, a family member trying to get here, it affects them emotionally as they try to go about their day and complete their schoolwork and stay on top of things. So I have had students come to me, and I'm so honored to be trusted with that sensitive information, because it is really scary for some students to kind of reveal immigration status information about themselves when they feel in this educational setting where people should feel safe, right? But especially when we have the constant presence of immigration related surveillance and judgments and assumptions about what people's lives look like if they don't hold a certain type of status or papers. I think that can really frighten some people. And especially during years where we saw an uptick in hate crime and violence and xenophobia and anti-immigrant actions in the United States, it becomes even more important that we pay attention to this diversity of students, along the lines of status. That's one sort of angle of diversity that can get lost in the shuffle when we think about other types of diversity.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that, immigrants come in different arrays in terms of like undocumented, DACA recipients, children of immigrants definitely have like these unique experiences that you kind of talked about, and that it's very difficult to go through. But I wanted to ask what your experience with them in the classroom are. Do you think that they influence the classroom at all, or do they bring in a lot of perspective to other students who may not know? Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great question. And when I knew that I was talking to you all today, I was trying to think of past classroom experiences. And one that really sticks out in my head was a few years ago. I was teaching a seminar that I've taught a few times on the US-Mexico border. And in many of those classes, it had just sort of gone through the motions and the topics, and not many debates had come up among students. But in more recent years, not only do I think that students of varying immigration statuses and situations have been more vocal, but they've felt empowered and supported by each other in the classroom. And so I had one year where I taught that border seminar, and it was so interesting because one of the students in the class was an older student. He had been in the professional world. He had been a Border Patrol agent in the Southwest. And then on the other side of the spectrum, I had students who were either children of undocumented parents or who were undocumented themselves. And that was a very interesting semester. At first, it was a lot on me as a facilitator to make both sides of that spectrum feel like this is a classroom. Let's have an academic, discussion and debate, and let's try to inform each other. And then we had all the students in the middle who wanted to learn more about both ends and both perspectives. So that was really challenging over the course of the first few weeks, sort of reconciling those differences in life experiences, because on one hand, you had somebody who, it was their job and it was their profession, and they had certain outlooks and perspectives on what needed to be done and what their political views were. And then on the other side, it took some time to get those students with those immigration status backgrounds to feel safe and secure in voicing what they saw as problematic with US systems. But I think in the end, the respect was always there in the classroom. And I think that we as professors, we do need to be prepared for those moments in, okay, this is a conversation with wildly divergent opinions and life backgrounds, but that's any classroom, right? So if we're a good instructor and we want to make everyone feel like they're a scholar in our classroom, then, we use the readings to inform us of the academic viewpoint. We use life experiences to open up our eyes to what other people might have seen or gone through or thought. College is one of the most luxurious times in your life to be exposed to people who you might not ever get exposed to on a regular basis again once you leave here. And so it's more than anything the opportunity to listen, to absorb, to take in, to learn how to respond and debate in a healthy manner, and to actually feel empowered enough by your professor that what you have to say is valid, and then what another person has to say in response to that, there's a way to deal with it in a healthy, civilized manner and an ethical one. And I think we shouldn't shy away from having those difficult conversations, because it actually teaches us how to interact with each other as humans. And so if we avoid it, then we avoid learning how to have differences of opinion and be able to express ourselves in a way that makes us feel understood and the other person feel like we addressed their questions and their viewpoints too.
Yeah, I definitely think that exposure to these backgrounds and these experiences are so necessary in the classroom, because it allows us to inform and talk about all these experiences and learn from it, and just bring them into the conversation in the first place. And as you know, Stony Brook is a very diverse campus with people from many different backgrounds and experiences. And with that does come different opinions, like you said. It is inevitable to say that within recent years, the topic of immigration has caused an uproar and different group divisions. So let's say there was a student who strongly disagreed on a matter of immigration. Do you, as a professor, feel any obligation to defend, educate, or advocate for the fellow classmates who they might not know are directly being affected by immigration?
Yes, I think it's my job to sort of give the aerial view of things always. So that way, people who might be zoomed in on their opinion, their opposition, their political viewpoints, my job is always to bring the lens out. Like, let's zoom out and see through the past, through history, through the readings we have in front of us, through the previous conversations we've had, academically as a class, intellectually as people in a room together. What can we observe is problematic when it comes to, in American society, there has never not been a time when a population or more than one population has been extremely vulnerable, has been excluded, has been treated with discrimination as an outsider group. What's troubling is that it continues to be a pattern that this nation carries out, but the targets can shift over time, right? The targets can be racial, the targets can be gendered, the targets can be around nationality or geography. They can be provoked by events like 9/11, by Trump's election, by, lots of crises happening all over the world, asylum and refugee, movements around the globe. All of these political occurrences can have an impact on what people not only react to very viscerally in the moment, but then how they express themselves in educational settings. So my job is always to take somebody's opinion and try to open it up a little bit. And that can go for anybody's, right? So just getting people to see through the expertise I've been lucky enough to have through my training and my education, Somebody did that for me at that point in college. So my opinion is that as a professor, I'm paying that forward. I'm paying that intellectual openness forward for my students. I always try to emphasize that. And at the same time, it's, that's opening you up to, not having such a solitary sort of stance in the world, that we have to think communally in order for anything to change for the better. Because I think the more that we self-isolate, and that goes for the individual as well as the nation, that can not help us grow and develop in the ways that we say we want to. We also have to act like it. And thinking in that communal way is, the classroom can be a microcosm of that. It can be practice for the real world, and talking with other people.
I think that's definitely something really special. And as a professor, so far I've seen you tackle that in great ways. Like we've talked about xenophobia and all of its different shapes and forms, and how that's bled down to affecting groups of people, like in every aspect of their life. And so I find that very, very special, and you definitely do a great job of that. And so being at Stony Brook, around 13% of the student body are international. But what's kind of interesting is that we don't really have like definitive statuses for other students of different categories, like undocumented or DACA students or recipients. Do you think that there's a certain reason for this, like a particular aspect of like admissions or of like personal identification that like avoids these other categories?
Yes, my hunch with that is that I think at one point there was a group of Dreamer students who did want to start a more publicly visible club or awareness campaign on campus about their presence, especially, about a few years ago when there was an uptick in hate crimes. And COVID also was an event that sort of made anti-Asian violence and hate crimes resurge across a lot of different settings, including New York. But I think what is stopping that kind of self-identification and putting oneself forward as being part of those more vulnerable communities is that the United States federal government has kept things so unstable and so inconsistent legislatively that these students don't even know if the programs that they're currently protected under are going to be renewed anytime soon. I think that's why they might be teetering on the edge of self-identification in a public way, because they have no idea if all of a sudden DACA is going to turn into sudden deportation orders. They have no idea if the DREAM Act is going to pass in more states. They have no idea about what our Congress is going to do in terms of a comprehensive immigration reform package. We have stalled again and again and again. And because Congress keeps on reaching these stalemates, it is failing so many people in the nation, living, working, studying, carrying out daily existences here. And so I think at one point where there might have been the idea to have these categories of students who fall outside of that traditional international category, to acknowledge them in a more visible way, now it's become, again, part of this atmosphere of fear that the protections that they enjoy now might not be guaranteed tomorrow. And I think that that's what might be going on. But I'm always interested to hear from students, because it changes with every year, that groups of students are becoming a little bit more outspoken and willing to be activists along different lines in ways that I don't remember seeing when I first started here in 2012. I think that the newer generations of students at Stony Brook, including you all and the ones following you, are going to, change this campus environment for the better. I wish that they didn't have to carry so much of that load. I wish that the structures in place helped those students along much better.
I think you make a really good point about that, because when we were making up these questions, I was also thinking about why the university itself might not necessarily have statistics, and I hadn't considered the fact that it's literally sometimes just because students don't really know if they're going to be here, and we can't provide definitive statistics based on that. But when I was thinking about it, I was thinking how this might come off to students of that background, and what that says about Stony Brook's representation or even awareness of these types of students. When I was having a discussion with my team about these questions, I was thinking more of in a way of, if we don't have these, like, international students, like if you look up the population that Stony Brook has international students, there's a definitive number on there. But maybe for students of, DACA recipients or dreamers, when they're doing their research and where they want to apply for school, do you think that not knowing how many students at Stony Brook per se are dreamers or are of a similar background to them, do you think that would sway them from maybe not coming here? Or do you think that not having this kind of information be public information, do you think that creates like a social gap between our international students and our domestic students?
It's such a great question. No one wants to feel alone, like they'll be the only one when they apply to college, right? I think when we apply to college, we're looking for an environment that will push us in certain ways, but feel familiar as well, familiar enough and open and welcoming enough that we're not scared of becoming a community member there. I do wish there was a way of Stony Brook being able to collect this information without it being intimidating to students. If it could be anonymous, but then we would be able to collect some statistics from our students along those demographic lines. It would be really cool, in my opinion, for us to actually walk the walk when it comes to our talk about being a sanctuary campus. When the Muslim ban happened and JFK Airport, the protests were going on, one of our own Stony Brook grad students was caught up in those deportation flights, and we had to work to get her back. That was a moment in which Stony Brook said, we are a sanctuary campus and we won't cooperate with ICE. But then after that, I never really saw any follow-through practices when it came to, making that a very visible thing on our websites, on our venues of talking about ourselves. We do market ourselves, and we're proud of the fact that we have a very diverse student body. This is another really important avenue of diversity that is not talked about so often, precisely because these people feel so vulnerable that self-identification can feel really risky. So if it was a system of really well thought out anonymity, but it's just for the purposes of making other people feel not so alone when they're looking at colleges, I would be optimistic about something like that. And I would think it would actually be useful.
I definitely think that I agree with you completely. And I was just wondering, to kind of build off of that, do you think there's a way to bridge this gap and kind of mend what you were talking about?
Bridge the gap between different types of students, or bridge the gap between the university and its...
Bridge the gap, I suppose, between the students and just kind of bridging the gap, the social gap between not just domestic and international students, but kind of bridging the gap overall on the representation and awareness of these students.
I think it needs to happen at several levels, right? Because college has within it very multiple layers of interaction. So we have the classrooms, right? And professors can do their part in order to not be afraid to talk about contingents of students who might not feel seen. That's why I love teaching my History of Latinos class, or the History of the Working Class, or my labor history courses, because it allows me to bring up different groups of students that when they are mentioned, you can just see it in their presence, like their ears perk up, their eyes light up, like they feel acknowledged. And I love those moments where I can make my students feel like, I see you, I know you're here, I'm talking about you, your history is important. So we can do it at that level in our job as faculty, and make it relevant, make our disciplines relevant to their lives, their presence, and acknowledge that for many, many periods in American history, there have been undocumented people. We have created a system in which we have made people feel excluded, and not just the people who we might not normally think of today as undocumented, but other groups of people over time. The spectrum is vast in that way. But college also has this layer of interaction when it comes to the housing, when it comes to the communal spaces in which students interact. I think that it is really brave if a student who identifies as undocumented or with precarious immigration status, or as a DACA recipient or a dreamer, to say that about themselves in spaces where the majority of students might not even be thinking along that plane. I think it's very courageous because it puts one in a spotlight that these kinds of immigration related matters, you try to avoid being in the spotlight, right? Because it actually makes you really vulnerable and marginalized. So again, it shouldn't be on the students themselves to have to do it alone. I think training at the RA level, training at the residence hall director level, training at the different workplaces on campus that our students work at, just having that sensitivity training, that is part of bias work. Because when we think about biases, we're not just talking about prejudice, we're also talking about just assumptions about the world that we live in. So if people move through their days at Stony Brook or somewhere else thinking and assuming everybody enjoys the same sort of privileges they do in just moving around and feeling, sort of not worried about an immigration related matter, that actually flips a switch when it's mentioned that the people who are working beside you in the campus Starbucks or the library or, wherever, they might have very, very different immigration and citizenship, situations than you do. And I think that's a reminder that doesn't take very much time to make, but it actually has to be built in to the university setting in multiple ways in order for that discourse to become more common and for people to be more sensitive and aware that these students are sitting next to them in the lecture hall and walking the same quads they're walking. And I think little by little that can change, and it can be built into the very culture of campus if we start small in those ways, but in multiple spheres.
You touched on this next question a little bit, kind of like talking about the strength and vulnerability and like the courageousness of these students and faculty having these discussions and cultivating these safe spaces for others that may not have like the ability to speak up. So do you think that having like these types of discussions between students and faculty is beneficial in advancing the education of immigration advocacy?
I definitely think so. I think that in some ways, Stony Brook is, it's challenging for us to have these student faculty gatherings because we are a commuter school, right? Everybody has such complicated lives and, living in different places and going back and forth and very tight schedules. And we overcommit ourselves because we get excited about a lot of different things, right? But we also have responsibilities to our families, to, our jobs, to other things that we have going on. But I definitely think because in addition to being a professor, I'm also the director of our Latin American and Caribbean Studies Center on campus. LACS has actually been a great thing for me because I get to schedule those kinds of community meetings and I get to make those things happen and try to find a time and a day that works for both students and faculty to talk together. Because I feel like, especially in bigger courses, some students might feel anonymous to their professors, but they want to get to know them better. And discussions like this, if they're framed as casual, if they're framed as this is just people getting together to, talk about their experience of being here and what kind of life background they're coming from, I think that can be a low pressure way to get that conversation moving from the social to the intellectual to the activist, right? And by activism, that can mean all sorts of things, right? At a different level that everybody could feel comfortable with. Some people are more comfortable researching and writing, and that's their advocacy work. Some people want to be out holding posters at protests, and that's their activism. Some people want to be somewhere in between or mobilizing different people to be in a group or start a club on campus, write for the paper. There are all different sorts of ways to be advocates and to be allies. And I think starting with those events on campus, through centers, through residence halls, saying this is a chat, like let's just have a coffee hour together and let's meet people who we might have been wanting to get to know, but our schedules, make us think that we can't really ask more of their time, because professors feel that way about students too. We see you all rushing off and we know that you're busy. And so to have these moments pre-planned where we can, let people know, hey, put this on your calendar and I'd love to see you there. Like, I think that can be a great starting point. And it's already going on at Stony Brook, but I think it can happen more. And somebody who might be a brand new student who's been on Zoom, for most of their high school education and is coming into a real 3D interaction at Stony Brook, I think it's really imperative every year to keep welcoming new students, transfer students, all the students who might feel like nobody's paying attention to the fact that I'm here. It's making people feel seen. Going back to how I started my answer, is making people feel acknowledged.
I completely agree with what you said, and I appreciate you being part of the conversation. This was only like 20-30 minutes, but I think it means a lot, at least to myself and my team, and we want to share this video so that other students can hear what faculty members have to say. And I know we kept you a little bit longer than we said we would, so I apologize, but I really do thank you for being part of this project, and we hope that this hopefully spreads and that other clubs and organizations or other students on campus feel like they have a voice and are also allowed to have these conversations with other professors on campus. So thank you for helping us with that. We hope you have a lovely rest of your day. And again, we really appreciate what you had to contribute today. So thank you so much, Dr. Flores.
Thank you for the thoughtful questions. Good to see you all.
All right, thank you. Have a nice day.
You too. Bye.
Well, thank you all for tuning into this episode. We hope that you gained some new perspective.
Check us out on our Instagram listed below and subscribe to our YouTube channel so you don't miss out on any new episodes.
And if you have any questions, please feel free to contact us via email or DM us on Instagram.
We'll see you guys in the next episode. Bye!